I want to thank Giorgio Placenza for his introduction and for being instrumental in my being able to have an opportunity to speak to this conference. I also would like to thank the organizers of the conference for inviting me. The topic of my presentation today is Formation of Leaders for EDS from an Integral Theory Perspective, Challenges and Perspectives. And among those challenges and perspectives are generativity, transdisciplinarity, and integral leadership. As I consider all these concepts, they feel a bit overwhelming when we think about the complexity of sustainability, education, development, and leadership. It's not difficult to feel a bit overwhelmed. Sometimes, particularly when we have experienced a success, we have a fleeting thought that we have found a magic formula that will work in the future. However, the future brings new contexts, new life conditions, and we often find that we need to alter our magic formula. Now, this isn't something to be regretted. It is, after all, key to our learning process. Understanding that we are being and doing in complexity that moves in time is essential to that learning and our own development. Central to that awareness, our consciousness of ourselves, our relationships, and our contexts. We need frameworks, maps, models that can evolve and develop with us, that change and shift as these conditions change and shift as well. What I'm going to offer today are several lenses that may be helpful to such development. They're relevant to our own understanding and development of those we work with and teach, and the institutions that support and participate in that learning. They're offered as a set of hypotheses that are not without supporting evidence in research and practice. However, today the most important thing may be for us to reflect on our own worldviews, our own meaning making about the challenges faced in education for sustainable development. I hope you will join me in that. Individual consciousness and awareness, and here is an example of a hypothesis of sorts, leads to increased comprehension of complexity, which leads to increased potential for effective development and action. So what is it we're being conscious or aware of? Well, we're being conscious and aware of ourselves, those things that we can observe and those things we cannot, those we can measure and those we can only intuit. We are also applying that awareness to others and the world in which we live. Victor Havel, the former president of the Czech Republic, wrote, "Consciousness precedes being, and not the other way around. For this reason, the salvation of this human world lies nowhere else than in the human heart, in the human power to reflect, in human meekness, and in human responsibility. Without a global revolution in the sphere of human consciousness, nothing will change for the better, and the catastrophe toward which this world is headed, be it ecological, social, demographic, or a general breakdown of civilization, will be unavoidable." He implies another point, and that is that the potential for movement into different levels of thinking is inevitably influenced, constrained, and limited by the thoughts, feelings, language, metaphors, models, maps, and frames through which we reference and make sense of the world. Individually, our consciousness is a product of our capacities and capabilities in relation to our life conditions. Those elements that impact how we comprehend ourselves, others, and the contexts that shape our understanding. Collectively, we need to shape each individual consciousness, or we help to shape each individual consciousness, and bring that consciousness into a set of understandings, values, aspiration, and intentions that we call culture. It suggests another proposition, and that is that the sum of all individual consciousness, all the worldviews, aspirations, and so forth, is what makes up culture, equals culture. Now, as with many words in English, the term culture means different things to different people. For example, it's often used to refer to a set of shared worldviews and values held by a group of people in a family, a village, an organization, or a nation. Alternatively, I like to think of culture as the constellation, that sum of values, beliefs, worldviews, aspirations, and intentions in human systems, whether that system is tribal, regional, or national. If we take this approach, we can be aware of not only what is shared, but also what is not. This in turn provides us with a richer fabric to understand what we observe in human systems. An approach such as this supports our comprehending the complexity of what we are working with individually and collectively, whether we are trying to manage or lead a change in agricultural practices, the drying of the Peruvian Amazon rainforest, the degradation of water systems by the poisons used in mining, a shift to the use of renewable resources for energy production, or any of a myriad of other changes that support generativity in our world. We recognize that sustainability may be essentially a conservative concept in our meaning making, as others at this conference have pointed out. It urges us to protect and preserve life. In addition, we know that we need to build on that idea so that future generations can thrive. We keep in mind that generativity is essential for the evolution and sustenance of the human race, much less all of the other non-human beings in the world. It is about how we evolve a world that thrives. Yet it is also about the deaths that must occur in the evolution of our lives, our cultures, and our planet. It is the Shiva process, destruction, and creativity. The path to building our individual capabilities lies through lifelong learning. It's commonplace today to see this notion urged upon us. It is a pathway for letting go of what no longer supports generativity. And we experience along this pathway little deaths as our old mental models and beliefs are replaced by new. We find that we must maintain what we can while letting go of what no longer serves us, our communities, and our world. We experience stagnation not only as we age, but as we make choices that reduce our use of aspects of our being. The challenge is for us to learn new skills and competencies to meet the changing requirements of the contexts in which we live and work, as well as developing and using practices that support such learning. It is also about learning about ourselves as sense and meaning-making beings. Erik Erikson, the world-famous Freudian psychiatrist who wrote a wonderful analysis of Mohandas Gandhi, is quoted as saying, "Reconciling lifelong generativity and stagnation involves the elder in a review of his or her own years of active responsibility for nurturing the next generations, and also in integration of earlier life experiences of caring and of self-concern in relation to previous generations. With the pace of change and challenges to our very existence, it is no longer just the elders who need to review, but each of us, frequently. For this supports our learning. This supports our attending to the dynamics of evolution and change, of enemy and development. Dr. George Vaillant observed, "Winter comes to every one of us sooner or later, and every spring, just like clockwork, the garden is reborn. By the time we die, the real question is, what have we done to leave our garden better prepared for spring, someone else's spring?" Another comment is that, in essence, generativity is the act of preparing another's garden for spring. It's power in the service of love. It's an act of giving that enables another person to manifest his or her own strengths and gifts through love. Generativity protects our mental and physical health across an entire lifespan. When we nurture others, we nurture ourselves. We live in concert with our values, whether they manifest in harmony or dissonance at any given moment. Individually, we comprehend and apply our values in context, changing life conditions, changing how we take action, how we use our values to make choices. While many of us can resonate with these ideas, there are many who cannot. If we are committed and passionate about generativity, then we also need to learn to engage with others who carry their own understanding, pace of learning, and life conditions that shape their worldviews and their actions. This suggests a wide variety of stakeholders in our endeavors, multifaceted cultures, multi-layered worldviews and values. This complex variety exists not only out there in the worlds of villages, businesses, governments, and the like, it exists right here and now. It exists in those contexts seeking to bring knowledge and experience to address the challenges facing us. I imagine that the number of academic disciplines, organizational affiliations, and formal positions within those organizations, not to mention the various nationalities present today, includes many different perspectives on what is important, why it is important, and how to engage with sustainability and generativity, politically, socially, culturally, systemically, and ecologically. Universities, with their range of academic disciplines, are models of such influence and relevance, diversity, and variability. We need to look no further than institutions of higher education for the challenges, responses, and learning in efforts to bridge differences. So a new hypothesis is that universities plus transdisciplinarity leads to innovation and integration. In our book, Transversity, Transdisciplinarity in Higher Education, Sue McGregor of Canada and I explore the idea of transdisciplinarity and how educational institutions in many parts of the world have engaged with approaches that go beyond inter- and multidisciplinary efforts. Many of these programs are focused on sustainability. Stellenbosch in South Africa, the University of Sydney in Australia, Boku in Vienna are examples. Alfonso Monturi, who teaches at the California Institute of Integral Studies in California, states in the foreword of our book, transdisciplinarity attempts to understand the complex, the in-between, and that which does not fit into the pre-existing categories of existing systems of thought. In other words, it's an approach that embraces a philosophy of both and, rather than either or. It's an approach very much in harmony with Edgar Morin's own ideas about transdisciplinarity. As Basarab Nicolescu has pointed out, transdisciplinarity does not replace traditional disciplines, but enriches each of these disciplines, which remains as it is. Instead, the transdisciplinary method enriches each of these disciplines by bringing them new and indispensable insights which cannot be produced by disciplinary methods. These examples I'm about to share with you are variations on what transdisciplinary approaches look like that can be found in our book. At Boku, they had a project to examine the pressures of development on the ecology of the foothills of the Alps in western Austria. Scientists from several disciplines joined with social scientists in initially forming a university team, and this team went into the field and developed mechanisms for other stakeholders to participate in the research process. In Mexico, we identified 2 college-university programs, one on either coast. At Universidad Arcos in Puerto Vallarta, the entire college degree program became transdisciplinary. At the Universidad Veracruzana, the focus is on a master's program in sustainability. We found still another approach in Brazil. There, the university brought in a consultant to put together a transdisciplinary approach to examine business opportunities at the Fundação Getúlio, and pardon my pronunciation, Vargas, in Sao Paulo. In this program, teams from economics, management, law, information technology, and the social sciences examine the potential impact of investments on communities, local cultures, and economies. These research projects were funded by a major bank, Brazil's largest cosmetics manufacturer, and by the businesses who have used the reports from these teams to make decisions about development projects. Probably the most comprehensive and complex effort has grown out of the sustainability program at Arizona State University in the United States, just north of where I'm speaking to you from. There is close collaboration with industry, business, and entrepreneurs, as well as local community agencies, in projects that include collaborative research and innovation. This initiative is not just about the collaboration with those outside the university, but involves the development of new structures and collaborations within the university. At Arizona State University, academic careers are being built within the transdisciplinary programs, not only within traditional disciplines. In fact, faculty are full-time with the transdisciplinary programs. They publish in peer-reviewed transdisciplinary journals and are evaluated for promotion and tenure based on criteria generated in the transdisciplinary domain of the university. Traditional disciplines continue to exist in parallel and continue to have their own requirements for tenure. These programs and others that I haven't mentioned are important because they provide us with laboratories of not only learning about complexity, sustainability, innovation, and generativity, but also because they support learning and the new cultures and systems of learning and of development that are required. But what is truly interesting about these examples and others are the challenges faced in designing, creating, and implementing the elements and approaches of such extraordinary efforts. There are many challenges, and let me just highlight 4. The mindsets and aspirations of individual stakeholders in these efforts would be the first. The mindsets and aspirations, where people are coming from, what they hope for, how they make sense and meaning out of the world. Second, the actions that they take as a result of those mindsets, those meaning-making systems, including language. Third, the cultures of the stakeholder institutions, that sum of mindsets and aspirations and worldviews and the like that occur in a human system as a result of a set of stakeholders in what is happening within that system. And fourth, the structures and processes that exist within and among these institutions. Each of these four elements, interior, individual, behavior, culture, systems, represent a domain in a more integral and holistic mental model or map that is relevant to any of our efforts to comprehend and take action in the world. There are other elements of this map, and I hope there'll be some time to address some of them. However, if you want to learn more about integral theory and its applications, there are many sources, including our online publication, the Integral Leadership Review. Let me offer you another hypothesis. Integral theory, maps, models, leads to increasing clarity and completeness in our comprehension and decision making, which in turn leads to diminished reductionism, fewer blind spots, less attribution of cause and effect in a reductionist manner. Beginning with the mindsets of individual stakeholders, we're going to find that in any kind of developmental effort, there's going to be diversity of these worldviews and mindsets. The values that people bring, the aspirations they bring in any transdisciplinary effort, both within and beyond the walls of academia, are going to be considerable. In the Boku example that I gave you earlier, one of the communities and stakeholder communities that they did not include in that research was the business and industry community. And why might that happen? Well, in this case, it's because the academics who were involved in this program did not trust people in the business and industry community. Now, I don't think that's going to be unusual or unique to that particular setting. But what that meant, from my point of view at least, is that if you're going to look at the impact of development on a region, that business and industry have major roles to play in what that development looks like, how it's managed, how it's designed, how it's implemented, all the rest. So, attending to individual mindsets, values, worldviews, and the like is a critical part of comprehending any kind of developmental activity. Next are the actions that people take. Now, those actions emerge from those mindsets and values and the like, but they're also related to something like the language, the very language we use. Not just particular words, but the entire structure of language. For example, a core behavior is how we communicate, and the monological and dialogical dynamics of sense and meaning making. Lera Borodinsky is a Stanford researcher, PhD, who's gained a lot of media attention recently about her work with languages. Let me quote from her. "We have collected data around the world from China, Greece, Chile, Indonesia, Russia, and Aboriginal Australia. What we have learned is that people who speak different languages do indeed think differently, and that even flukes of grammar can profoundly affect how we see the world. Language is a uniquely human gift central to our experience of being human. Appreciating its role in constructing our mental lives brings us one step closer to understanding the very nature of humanity. Our languages manifest in behaviors and in relation to whatever it is we're undertaking in our development efforts, in our activities. And they also influence how we make sense and meaning of ourselves and of our world. How we think influences what we do, and vice versa. Thus, individual behaviors, while influenced by many factors, are linked to how we language our world of intentions and worldviews. So then what about the culture? The third domain that I spoke of. Human systems are made up of many stakeholders. Even a basic unit as a family is often related to the tribe, to the community, to a class, to the economy, and many other structures in the system. Each individual stakeholder brings a worldview, a set of values and intentions. If we want to understand the culture of a particular context, then it's useful to understand what is constellated. What is constellated? That summation of values, meaning, and sense-making phenomena, intentions, and worldviews. In projects related to sustainability and generativity, and involving transdisciplinary research, innovation, and problem solving, the same is true. Language influences all of these. Now, a key point here is not that we have to whip everyone in shape to agree on these things by producing shared worldviews or shared values, but that we need to work with people where they are. Clare Graves, an American psychologist and researcher, the late Clare Graves, is known to have said, "Everyone has a right to be who they are. They have a right to their values and worldview." Now, this does not mean that there are no universal values or that anything goes. This is not a relativist argument, some extreme postmodern point of view. It does mean that if we are to engage in transdisciplinary, sustainable, generative work together, that we need to find ways for diverse perspectives to be heard, seriously responded to, and integrated to the highest degree possible. We need to do this not to please everyone, but to find paths that are functional, generative, and sustainable. Otherwise, we promote more destructive conflict, more defensive responses, more barriers, more power over than power with. I would suggest that for the generative, the sustainable to occur in any meaningful way, there needs to be a lot more power with. Now, with regard to the fourth domain of structures and processes, any of the examples we look at of transdisciplinary work emanating from universities and institutions like UNESCO will have structures, technologies, processes, and the like that can either facilitate or inhibit generativity and sustainability. These may include sets of procedures, regulations, level of support for sound practices related to community, or related to economy, culture, and ecological contexts. The variables in this domain are just extraordinary. There are many, many, many of these variables. Just think about how decisions are made, how problems are solved, how resources are accumulated and distributed, how performance is rewarded or not. The systems and structures and processes and technologies of the context influence or are manifested through all those kinds of dynamics. Well, if language is so significant, then what about the language of leadership? Because if nothing else, the world has been crying for effective leadership in many, many domains. In higher education in particular, some examples from our book, Transversity, are that of what is required of individuals in leader roles is that they must be open to new paradigms. This is not just models and maps and the like, but also to methodologies. Those in leader roles must learn how to language the strengths, challenges, and opportunities of existing institutions to move toward more holistic and integrated approaches to learning, to research, and community engagement. They must be skilled in reaching across disciplines, forming and reforming networks. This includes appreciating diverse perspectives in the developmental process. And they must encourage the attraction of resources that support dealing with real-world challenges with transdisciplinary approaches, including reaching across internal and external boundaries of the university. As you can imagine, there are many, many more challenges, but the point here is that there is a need to have and develop effective leadership. I wonder what images come to your mind as you hear that call for effective leadership. In the U.S., there are more than 1,500 definitions for terms like leader and leadership. There are at least 46 theories of leadership. Worldwide, there has grown up a leadership industry that attracts $80 billion plus a year to put on training programs and other activities related to fostering effective leadership, be that in business, in NGOs, in government organizations, and the like. Barbara Kellerman of Harvard has written extensively of this in her book, The End of Leadership. Now, along the lines of talking about language, as I have been, this quote from a 1907 American historian: "Someone has remarked that there is a latent tendency in the human mind to define a thing in order to avoid the necessity of understanding it. We need to develop our understanding by changing the way we conceptualize terms such as leading, leader, and leadership. I anticipate that the work of scholars like Lara Boditsky will show how the language we use affects how we think, and will support my contention that the way we language leadership phenomena affects the way we think about these. More specifically, I suggest that we use distinctions among these terms. And because context is so critical to their definitions, only when we are talking about leading, leader, and leadership in a particular context will definitions be useful, albeit bounded by the variables of that context. Distinctions help us see differences and contrasts among things. Thus, by making distinctions, we're creating criteria with which to evaluate or describe phenomena in any particular context. We're laying the foundation for what questions to ask, what it is we need to look at and look for, and by using these distinctions and being clearer about them, we can be more aware and articulate about how we comprehend phenomena related to leadership in human systems. We will be using words as lenses through which we engage in sense and meaning making. They are frameworks for understanding as opposed to imposing meaning. They are ways of being able to understand as opposed to avoid understanding, as Latane talked about. A group of MIT researchers recently came up with a study regarding ambiguity in language, and here's a brief quote. In a system optimized for conveying information between a speaker and a listener, each word would have just one meaning, eliminating any chance of confusion or misunderstanding. Now, a group of MIT scientists has turned this idea on its head. In a new theory, they claim that ambiguity actually makes language more efficient by allowing for the reuse of short, efficient sounds that listeners can easily disambiguate or reach definitions with the help of context. Various people have said that ambiguity is a problem for communication, according to one of these researchers. But once we understand that context disambiguates and defines, I'm adding the and defines, then ambiguity is not a problem. It's something you can take advantage of because you can reuse easy words in different contexts over and over again. And the challenge for us in our communication with each other is being really, really clear about that context. Now let me talk a little bit about leadership and give an example of what I'm referring to here about distinctions among terms. Three terms that are very typically used in relation to this world of leadership are leading, leader, and leadership. I'm going to offer you a set of distinctions that may not be the best, that can be improved upon, and I would encourage people to do so. The first is the term leader. How can we distinguish this concept in a way that's going to be useful to us? Well, I would propose that we begin by thinking about leader as a role, not a person, but a role. Now, what do I mean by role? In this case, I think of a role as a set of expectations. It's what the stakeholders expect of someone who begins leading, who steps into what I would call the leader role. Who are the stakeholders? Anybody who's going to be impacted by the performance of that individual in that role. So it could be clients and customers of a system, it could be employees, superiors, suppliers, anyone who is going to be impacted by the performance of an individual in that role. Well, if leader is a role, then leading is what people do when they step into that role. Much of the literature, especially the popular literature about leadership in the world, the ones you may be familiar with that offer the 7 steps, the importance of heart, the importance of authenticity, and a whole bunch of other things, are essentially talking about leading. They're talking about what well-known individuals have done and how they have acted and how they have behaved in a particular context. Some of these, based on extensive research, have come up with patterns. But still, these are simply maps. They are not the truth. They are examples of what people do to be effective when they're leading, when they step into a leader role. One of the implications of thinking about it this way is for how we approach what has historically been called leader development or leadership development. If we think about leading as what individuals do when they step into a leader role, then if we want to develop people to be effective in leader roles, that's exactly where our focus needs to be, on individual development. Individual development. This relates back to the lifelong learning idea. And we can recognize that while we can expose people to theories, models, we can expose them to the practices that other people in other contexts have done, and some of those may be useful. that the heart of developing individuals for leader roles is the development of the individuals themselves. And this means we're not just talking about behaviors, we're not just talking about skills, we're talking about their self-understanding, their ability to recognize patterns in their worldviews and values, to see those in others, to understand how to relate in that dimension. The third concept, leadership, then, is an inclusive concept in these distinctions that I'm offering. It includes the role, the leading, what individuals do when they step into the role, and it includes the culture and the systems, processes, and technologies of that context. Thus, we have an integral perspective on what we mean by leadership. It includes all those key domains. It also includes the idea that there are different developmental levels along different lines of development in each of those domains. And that's an area where we have lots of work still to do to understand. But if we can recognize, for example, that there are multiple intelligences, that our development individually is about not just our cognitive development, but our emotional development, in some cases our kinesthetic development, perhaps even spiritual development. There are many dimensions along which we will develop, and how we develop is as much a product of our values and perspectives as it is on the life conditions in which we live and work. So from an integral point of view, all of these dimensions are very important. All of these aspects are very important. And I'd like to conclude at this point by suggesting that this integral lens opens the door to a more coherent approach that can help us sort through the research and myth about leadership, see the true but partial, because one of the values of the integral perspective is, as Ken Wilber has said, no one's smart enough to be wrong all the time. So we are looking for the value added of each contribution and how they can fit together in an integral framework. We can see what is included and what is not in any particular approach. The integral lens offers insights into why the plethora of traits proposed for leaders or individuals in leader roles can be so distorting of leading effectively by ignoring context, and how our semantics of leadership perpetuate great man mythologies and disempower so many others who have played significant roles, even leader roles, in the achievement we ascribe to individuals. When we are engaged in complex developmental processes while seeking to promote sustainability and generativity, we can readily see that leading research, education, and other development projects can benefit from more transdisciplinary methodologies and make the thinking about leading, leader, and leadership more valuable for individual and culture and systems development. This more integral approach to sense and meaning making in our planning, design, and implementation offers far greater potential because it will help us see our blind spots and the potential for both intended and unintended consequences. Thank you very much.